what's going on, everybody? How's it hanging? How's it happening? You guys know what it is. This is Kevin from the Chord Progression podcast, brought to you by MSOTD Rocks, where rock and metal thrive. Happy special Wednesday, everybody. It is the last day of the first half of 2021. It is June 30th, and when I say special episode, holy crap, is this going to be a good one. But before we jump into it, I want to thank our sponsor, Phoenix Fitness, because, well, concerts are coming back, man. Live shows are coming back, and I am ready to go. Been working out, been making sure my body's in tip-top shape so that, festivals, 3-4 days of straight mosh pit. I want to be ready for it. I want to achieve those fitness goals. I want to make sure I'm ready, but got to make sure I hit the gym and got to make sure I recover right, get my right supplements, get right vitamins in me. So how do I do that? Again, Phoenix Fitness with all their products from different pre-workouts, non-stim stuff because I don't do well with caffeine, different BCAA recovery stuff, different protein, whatever might be, they have your needs. So go check it out. They'll help you achieve your fitness goals. And our listeners of the Chord Progression podcast get 15% off using the code MSOTD at checkout. Link description below for everything along with the code. But now my guest today, ladies and gentlemen, you know the band Bad Wolves. There's been a lot of things going on with Bad Wolves since 2021. You guys are aware of it. And Doc Coyle, the lead guitarist, is here on the podcast today. I know you guys are thinking, do we talk about Tommy Vex at all? Yes, it is brought up. Do we talk about DL joining the band and the story behind that? Yes, we do. And we also talk about, well, man, how we miss live shows, of course. But there's going to be a lot there for you to really dive deep into Bad Wolves and get ready for their next album coming out. Hopefully sometime in 2021, maybe 2022. But I'm ready for it. And I can't wait for you guys to hear DL on that album. I know they can't either, but I can't wait. So enough of that. Let's get to the podcast. Are you guys ready? Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression podcast, I want to give a big shout out to Tony from the band Defy the Tyrants for connecting me with this man right here. One of the biggest bands right now, I'd say, in hard rock and metal. I mean, they have 2 albums out right now, and they just completely blew up through that. And you guys know their names. You guys know who they are, and you probably have seen them live before, but let's just get into it. Please welcome Doc Coyle from the band Bad Wolves. So, Doc, welcome to the Chord Progression podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
I got to ask this first question with, what's up, Doc?
Well, I can't, I'd be lying if I'd say it's the first time I've heard that. So, I don't know. We don't have to work on that, but I forgive you and I love you. All right. It's all good.
Thank you. I actually had a plan. I was like, you know what? I might pull out an actual carrot and like chomp on it when I say that. But you know what? I ran out of a carrot today. So I'm like, you know what? Nah, we'll just say it. Fuck it.
Well, listen, I enjoy a good carrot from time to time, especially with hummus. So.
Ooh, yeah, I totally forgot about that. Because every time you go to a party now, it's like someone's got a huge thing of hummus. They got a platter out there. They got all these different vegetables. Carrots are usually the big way to go, though.
Very healthy. Very healthy.
Exactly. And you get good eyesight off that. It's just like, ooh, now you don't have to wear glasses if you eat like 20,000 of them. But you might get sick off of that. Don't really recommend it.
Well, I don't know if that's scientific, but, I guess it can't hurt to try, right?
I mean, if someone wants to try and film it, you might get famous online on like TikTok or YouTube or something like that. Would I try it, though? Yeah, probably not. But if you want to, go for it. I mean, anyone listening, go for it. All right, Doc, as we get this podcast rolling, there's always something I like to start out with, and I'm going to ask you 3 very specific questions. The first 2 are super simple, super easy. If you can't answer them, I'm really going to question a lot. But that third one is going to be a little interesting, put you on the spot a little bit, but it's always my favorite question to ask. So the first question is, Doc, what is your name? The second question is, when it comes to Bad Wolves, what do you do in the band? And the third one is, I want to know a little like fun fact, little fun, interesting story about yourself that will hopefully make me fall out of my chair laughing. It has happened before with bands telling me these different stories on the road where they've kidnapped their lead singer, chloroformed him, taken to a beach, buried him halfway in the sand, make it look like he got eaten by a shark. I've heard a bunch of crazy ones. Well, that's always like the one that sticks out in my head as my favorite of all time. So I would use that as an example. So Doc, whenever you're ready, I'll let you take it away.
Well, my government name is Marlon David Coyle. My nickname is Doc. It was given to me when I was basically a baby, apparently, according to my parents, by my older brother. And I play guitar in Bad Wolves, backing vocals. I also have another band called The Vegas Nerve that's haven't done anything in a while, but hopefully to get something done with that. I used to be in a band called God Forbid for a really long time. And as far as stories, I have so many stories. It's kind of like just trying to pick one is a little bit crazy. I'm trying to think. So is it this story is supposed to tell something about me or kind of show myself in an endearing light, or what are we talking about?
Honestly, it's whatever you want it to be. I've heard again a bunch. Sometimes people give stuff that's endearing. Sometimes people give stuff that's crazy. Just a fun, crazy, wacky story. Whatever comes to mind that again might hopefully make me fall in my chair laughing, smack my head against my table, give me a concussion. Finally get number 8. I've been stuck on 7 concussions for a while now. So if you get me to number 8 now, that's awesome.
Okay, so this is a kind of a funny, weird story. So God forbid was on tour in the United Kingdom in 2001, and this was at the time probably the worst tour we'd ever done. It was just a nightmare. Everything went wrong. We were supposed to tour with Opeth, and we got kicked off the tour. So our management and UK part label booked this tour last minute of us headlining, and we got put in these little like cargo vans. So we were like sleeping and laying on equipment instead of having chairs. And it was December, so it was freezing. So there was only heat in the front part of the cabs. And it would get dark at like 3 in the afternoon, and we were just miserable. Go to the shows, there'd be like 25 people there, and then we end up in Cardiff, which is in Wales. That's the main city there, right by the water. It's really freezing, and we find out day of that the show has been canceled. But we're so happy because we're so over it. We end up going out to the bars and partying, and we're like, and I get blackout drunk, right? And end up going home with this girl. and I somehow apparently the band's manager was on the tour with us, so he got her information. But I ended up going home with this girl, and she's doing stuff downstairs. Should be an exciting time, and I throw up. And I think I ruined the whole sexy time part of it. I think that gets all ruined because of me. And then I just wake up the next day having very like scant memories of like what happened, how I got here, who this person was. But I'm just like hanging out with her family, right? I don't know where I am. I don't know. I'm just like in Wales, and I'm on the television. What's her name? Nicole Kidman is like singing like a pop star. So in my mind, I'm thinking I've entered an alternate reality where like Nicole Kidman is a singer. This is my life now. This is my girlfriend. I'm just sitting there, and eventually within like an hour or two, there's a knock at the door, and it's my manager, and he had gotten the number of the girl and tracked her down, and they found me. And apparently we were only staying like a couple houses away. It wasn't that far. But for a brief moment, I thought I was, this is my new life. I was just going to be a regular bloke in Wales, and had a lovely lady, and we were watching television with the family, but I survived and made my way out. So that's a pretty funny story.
That might be one of the most interesting stories I have ever heard on this podcast. I don't know what it is, but usually when I hear stories about bands going international, especially over to Europe, there's always some sort of weird, wacky, crazy story involved. There's usually a girl involved at some point, and I can even attest that as well because I have had my own story where going over to Europe, there has been a wacky time in Amsterdam where a girl was involved to a point where I was there for like 40 hours maybe. I was there for 2 nights, spent both nights with her, and the second night I went to a Champions League qualifier. Was Ajax versus some team from Greece. I don't even remember who they were. And she took off of work to meet me at the game. And when I got there, I'm like, okay, where the hell is she? Like, people are just basically tailgating their own way instead of like what I'm used to here. People are just stopping at this random grocery store, buying 6 packs of Heineken, walking outside, putting them on the ground, and just starts drinking them. I'm like, holy shit! I got a half hour before kickoff. Like, just got some bites to eat. I hear this girl calling my name. I turn around, there she is. I'm just like, holy shit! She's got a 6 pack of Heineken on the ground. She's like, quick, we got to drink these before we go in. Challenge fucking accepted. Are you kidding me? This is awesome.
Yes, well, most good stories with musicians, you got the rock and roll part, and then you combine the sex and the drugs, and alcohol's a drug, so that counts. And then that's usually where the good stories come from.
And then you feel like, okay, this is my life now. I'm just gonna sit here and do this because that happened to me too. Before, when I got to the airport, I'm like, do I just skip my flight and just stay here? Because I came this close to doing that.
You got to keep in mind, this is 2001. It's pre-cell. I mean, some people had cell phones. I did not have a cell phone. Certainly didn't have a smartphone that, where you can tell where you are on GPS or anything. You were just on your own, so. Like literally during that time, you would go to like you'd buy like a telephone card and go to a telephone booth and then call home like that with like a prepaid telephone card. And you maybe call my mother or father like a couple times on a tour, and that was it.
Oh man, I mean that's just like a complete stark difference in what we're used to now, especially of course with the way technology is. But man, I can't even imagine just going back and just still again using a payphone. Granted, I mean I have used payphones in the past, but they were definitely on the way out by the time I got to be like, able to start going out further on my own and just start doing random shit. Because all of a sudden it's like, okay, get into high school, it's like, okay, and I already have my own like second cell phone by the time that happens.
Well, I definitely say Bill and Ted picked the wrong mode of transportation to travel through time, because they really weren't looking to the future when it comes to phone technology.
No, if they did that now, all of a sudden I don't even know where the hell they would find one to just go and travel through time. It would definitely be somewhere like you have to go to like the Smithsonian or something just to find one.
Or they'd have to, make a time machine out of a dumpster or something, just not telephones.
Or what they could always do is they could just kind of cross movies and then go back to the Matrix and actually use like, well, no, they used payphones too for that one too. Or landlines. They didn't use cell phones. Holy shit. Man, kind of dating ourselves right there. Holy crap.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. But of course, one of the biggest things, of course, with you, of course, being the guitarist for Bad Wolves as well. And I got to say, I was set to see you guys twice in the past 2 years. And both times, yeah, of course, should end up happening. The first time I was set to see you was on a tour that you guys were going to be doing, a co-headline tour with Hollywood Undead. And I'm like, I was so excited to see it. I'm like, fuck, I haven't seen Hollywood Undead in a couple of years. This is going to be awesome. COVID.
Yeah.
Fucking COVID.
Yeah, we were supposed to play with Metallica on that same run, and we were booked basically the entire year, and everything got wiped. But again, it wasn't just us; it was the whole industry. I mean, you had some bands who maybe just put a record out and couldn't tour on it, or maybe had a record that was coming out 6 months into that and had to delay things. So in some ways, we were luckier than a lot of bands, but I think we all took it on the chin in the last 18 months or so.
I mean, everyone kind of had something like that in terms of course, the pandemic affecting a lot of things going on. With you guys, a lot of the touring that you're going to do, again, that co-headline tour with Hollywood Undead, and I didn't even know you guys were set to play with Metallica. I mean, that's fucking awesome, especially with the fact that Metallica had that whole entire thing with 2020 where they're going to be doing 2 nights at each of the Danny Glover Presents festivals. So that would have been just absolutely massive just to be added on to that. But I do understand what you're saying, where I have talked to a number of bands where they had released albums like the week before the week of everything getting shut down. So it kind of felt to them like we released something and it never really fully got released because you couldn't go out and actually tour on it. You couldn't perform it in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, it's even just talking about it, it kind of bums me out. But the thing is, I mean, life is crazy and it's going to keep throwing you kind of curveballs. And you look at what happened with our band. I mean, it completely flipped our whole kind of universe and our reality. So and we're not alone in there. I kind of look at this as very similar to like 9/11, right? There was like a world before that and a world after that, and we haven't even begun to discover the world after that. I mean, in Los Angeles, for example, in California, they just fully opened up like a few days ago, and it's like, yes, I went to the movies, and they have a sign on the door that basically says, if you're vaccinated, masks are optional. But you kind of want to take it off, but then you see people wearing masks, you're like, should I, am I not? You're trying to figure out what the cool thing to do is. And eventually I took my mask off because I'm vaccinated, but it's like, it's still going to take some getting used to.
I mean, it took some getting used to, too, when everything first started happening, even though it was, okay, everything's getting shut down, you're kind of isolating your homes, and all of a sudden the mask mandates got rolled out. It took a lot of getting used to that, but that's just human nature. We're kind of resistant to change in that way. So when we see all of a sudden, okay, we've been wearing these masks for a little bit close to a year at this point, and now the mandates are completely gone, there's still this kind of comfort level that comes with, okay, we've been wearing these masks for over a year, we've been talking about this virus, we've heard about this virus, and are we still safe? Are we not? There's always a comfort level there, but of course there are some people that, like, right when the mandate got dropped, it's like, okay, anytime anyone goes into any kind of business here, it's like, you know what, screw this, woo, it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, and I get both arguments, and I get, people who kind of gravitate to different sides and what feels comfortable for them. But you're correct. We're totally creatures of habit, and you have some people who are just used to wearing the masks, and it'll take them a while maybe to break that habit, even if they are safe. So it's a tough one, and we're totally kind of victims of our own time, right? Because whatever time period you live in, there's our grandparents, they lived through like the Great Depression, and they went through World War II and things like that were really world altering events and stuff. I think sometimes people have a difficulty uh understanding the perspective of that. We just went through one of the craziest things. Like, this hasn't happened in 100 years. So it's just we survived it. Well, not all of us did. If we're lucky to have survived it, then we just have to kind of make the best of it.
Oh, absolutely. And it kind of comes to, like, I know there's a lot of people, it's like, okay, do you wear it? Do you not wear it? And then with the vaccines, I looked at it where it was, we have the options out there. We have the information out there. We're all adults. You make your decision because you're an adult. You're your own person. Make your decision. And then whatever happens, happens after that.
Yeah, listen, we could talk about that all day. I don't think anyone's going to be benefited from going down that road.
No, totally understandable. But I know it's like here in Wisconsin too. I'm like, I'm getting ready because all of a sudden, all these different concerts are coming back. The first big festival I know of is coming back in the middle of July with Rockfest here in Wisconsin. And I think you guys were on that bill at one point, but then had to drop off. And I assume it's because with the new lead singer, you guys just want to make sure you have enough time for DL to get ready and prepared, and just make sure that you guys are on top of your game when it comes to performing.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was when we canceled, we didn't have a singer. So it was it was close enough where we were worried that we wouldn't be ready. I mean, theoretically, we could play it, but based on what was going on, we thought it was a good idea to drop off. And then now, basically, there's, for lack of a better explanation, just legal stuff in the background where we're just right now we're probably not playing any concerts for the near future until that stuff's resolved.
So again, totally understandable. For me, I'm just like, damn, that was like the second time I'm like, I'm planning to see you guys. Here it's happening. It's going to be a festival. This is going to be fucking awesome. And I saw it got changed. I'm just like, damn it. But I knew there had to be some kind of explanation around there. I thought it definitely would have to deal with DL being the new lead singer, just making sure that you guys were going to be prepared enough to go on that show. But of course, there's always other things in the background that we as fans are never going to know about because, well, we're not supposed to know about them.
Yeah, listen, and in this situation, I mean, it's even difficult for us because the structure of the band business wise, I mean, we're in different positions. I mean, the band legally was John and Tommy. So even myself and the other guys in the band, we're getting information we're removed from some of that stuff. So and things are kind of constantly changing, and we're thinking this is happening and that's happening. And so it's, even for us, it's actually pretty confusing. So all we're trying to do on our end is kind of just trying to stay positive, stay focused and busy on whatever we can. The record is just about done. I mean, we thought we were done, and the record label wants some more music, so we went back to the drawing board, came up with some new songs, but I think we're right at that period where it's going to be pretty soon. We're going to be like, the record's done. We're getting mixes, like final mixes in now, and that's amazing to hear the songs in kind of their best presented light, and that's really refreshing. And once it's done, then we can, shoot music videos and put out music. And then I think ultimately that's all that really matters, is like, do people like the songs? Did we do our job as a band? And I'm very confident in that. So it's just like a waiting game of getting that out to people. And then ultimately people will decide whether they're down with what we're doing or not,
I mean, just listening to the music you guys have put out so far from an instrumental standpoint, because of course, we all know what's happened, but from an instrumental standpoint, there's a lot of different dynamics that are happening within a lot of these songs. The artistry is completely there, so it'll definitely be interesting to see what happens. But I do think that because that instrumental integrity is going to stay on there with you guys on that album, I mean, people are going to connect with it easily because it's still going to have instrumentally your sound at its core. Of course, the vocals over are going to be different, but with the fact that you guys really connect with a lot of people through 2 albums, that third one, people are really waiting for, people are really going to get behind, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But I think, again, with the fact that you guys are so well done with that instrumental integrity, I don't think it's going to be an issue for people to still just jump right into this album head first.
Listen, I know the people that do check it out are going to be into it for the most part, but ultimately, you know, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and the thing I've learned is that you just really can't get caught up in like the expectation game. Ultimately, you just don't know what's going to happen. You have to just go and work hard, do your best, but no one's promised this to have a career in this profession. It's so I've had it and lost it and gotten it back, uh you know, unless you're in that situation where you're in Metallica or you want to Iron Maiden or one of these bands that basically knows for a fact that they're going to be here and they're here to stay. Uh, Most of us, it's a fight, you know, to just have a career and be able to do this thing full time. So me, I've just always tried to have the gratitude every time, and anytime I've done it, especially with Bad Wolves happening so late, you know, basically my late 30s, getting a break like that, the whole time I was always treating it as if it wouldn't last, you know, because that was my previous experience, and just going, hey, just appreciate the moment, because tomorrow isn't really promised. And so, and with that, you just have to live in the present, right? So right now it's like touring is maybe a little off in the distance. When the record come out is a little off in the distance. So it's like, okay, what am I doing today? I'm having a conversation with you. That's what I got to focus on. I was working on a cover song literally 10 minutes before I got on here. I've been working on this cover song. It's like, oh, let me make this sick. Let's have fun with this. But you just can't worry about all that stuff, you know?
I do absolutely have to applaud and commend you for having that mentality as well, because I think I was looking at a couple of things from when A Day to Remember released their last album, and someone took a bunch of pictures from them in the studio, and there was a sign that said, remember, this could be the last time you ever record an album. And it kind of speaks to just, especially with the music industry, there are plenty of bands that have been out there. I mean, you've been a part of different bands as well, and not all of them last. Not many of them ever really last, just because there's so many different things happening within people's lives, within the band, the way that the world works. It could be a lot of different things. But being able to focus on the present and enjoying it now with still having a little bit of foresight in the future, so you're not getting completely lost into just like living in the moment, but focusing on mostly living in the moment, you're going to really appreciate everything that has been going on in terms of the success you've been having with Bad Wolves, and even what you're working on right now with this brand new album that's you're getting the final mixes on, you're really putting it together. You're appreciating the time that you have with this, because you know what it's like to completely always have to just like fight and claw and struggle in order to get recognized. And then when you have something like with Bad Wolves, where you are recognized as one of these top acts in rock and metal, all of a sudden you're consistently continuing to have that fire's mentality to stay at that position.
Well, keep in mind, I mean, the success that Bad Wolves has had is so much more beyond me. Like I have no way that I can claim credit for what the band has done. I'm really just a passenger in this ride, and that goes to the producers we work with. You know, we work with other songwriters, our record label, our management team. There's so many hands on the wheel of success that people, you know, when Bad Wolves took off, people, you know, I would do interviews like this and people ask me, oh, what's the secret, or what did you figure out? And it's like, I didn't really figure out anything. I just kind of was doing the same thing I've been doing. I just happened to be doing it with this group of people, and it happened to work. And sometimes you just play it's like, you know, you play the game enough and something's going to hit. So it wasn't that, you know, I figured something out. Like if Battles ended today and I started a new band, I don't think I would have all the answers of like, this is how you become successful, because I think every time it happens, it's a little bit of a magic trick, right? It's a little bit of a miracle every time, because you need to have, even if you have the right people or the right songs, a lot of things have to go right, and you have to get lucky. And it's having the right song at the right time, right? Like timing is everything in this industry.
No, absolutely. I mean, that could be for anything within the entertainment industry as well, outside of music, whether it's TV, movies, honestly, anything. If you just come in at the right moment, and you never know what the right moment might be. It could be tomorrow. It could be 10 years down the line. I mean, with, like you said, with Bad Wolves, you got that going more in your late 30s. So it did take some time, but the fact of the matter is you kept clawing and working at it to the point where when you finally got to that point where it seemed like all the ingredients between different band members, different producers, everybody that's on the team was just came together, and all of a sudden it just worked. it does speak to, there kind of has to be like a little bit of a luck factor in there to pick it at the right time. But if you keep, again, if you, like you said, if you keep trying more and more and more, eventually there's going to come a point where something is going to hit. You can't just expect everything to hit right from the first go, because no one ever gets it on the first try.
Well, some people do. I mean, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, they were, in their early 20s when they hit. So sometimes it does work. But listen, I think for me, the one thing I can take from it is just my taste in picking projects, because before this band hit, I was essentially a free agent and I was playing with different acts and I was working on my own band and I was kind of just working on a bunch of different projects. So you as an individual, if you're not in a band and you're maybe looking to join a band or start something or start a project, picking the right people to work with and the right material, like if someone, well, this is a situation where there was maybe 10 songs already done before I joined the band. And so I heard that and I was like, okay, there's something special here. Right. So if anything, my ability to pick something and say, in a way, kind of bet on a winner, so to speak, that matters. So just not, if you're someone who's talented and has ability, but you pick the wrong situation to be a part of, or if you hear maybe someone has something going, you listen to it and it's not that great and you sign up, now you've invested your time and energy in something that maybe doesn't have a great shot. So that's something I say that is in my control that I think bear it out to be wise.
And I can kind of, on a different aspect, kind of relate to that as well, because there were a couple other projects I tried before this as well. Sometimes work with my cousins because they had their own business going as well. And I was like, okay, they have this little other thing on the side that they're working to connect it with. They brought me in to try and see if it worked out. It just didn't work out. And it's like, okay, well, I tried that. And all of a sudden it's try a couple other things, a couple different people. And I said, fuck it, let's just give something a shot myself. And all of a sudden, boom, here I am. I'm talking on a podcast with you. And it seemed like I finally found something that hit, but it took time. It took a lot of different efforts to try and create something, to the point where I realized even for myself, it's like the best person to bet on is myself, and just keep working with myself on this. So when it comes to your aspect, again, as a band member, you're, as a free agent in a way, constantly looking for things. You're constantly looking to figure out what's going to work with you the best, and you had a little bit of a freedom too to find something that was kind of special in a way, like Bad Wolves has.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that was a great period of time for me in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do, kind of discover, because I was in, God forbid, from the time I was 16 till I was 32 years old, right? And I was so wrapped up in the mentality of the band, like thinking of a bigger collective experience more than thinking as an individual. I had to really change my whole mindset. Uh, you know, kind of even before I left, God forbid, like it's like the reason why I left, God forbid, was I was like, you know what, this isn't working for me, right? Like actually
Yeah.
taking that thing to go, hey, I'm my own person, and you can't always just think about the collective, because if you're not doing well, if you're not happy, if you're don't feel like you're meeting your potential, you're the only one that can change your fate and kind of stand up for yourself. So that was something that was really freeing, right? To just say, hey, I can do whatever I want. I can make any kind of music. I can work with whoever I want. And but it was also a period of discovery, right? Like, because I didn't have all the answers, right? I didn't know exactly what I was capable of, who I could play with. So it involved a lot of experimentation, playing with different people, putting myself in maybe uncomfortable situations, like jamming with different people, where I was like playing music I wasn't even familiar with, but purposefully doing situations that I would learn from and become a better, more versatile player.
And as you play with more people that play with a bunch of different styles as you as well, you could potentially pick up on a couple of different things, pick up on a couple of different, little bits and pieces that they put into their music, where all of a sudden, okay, when you're writing music for yourself or working with Bad Wolves, it's like, okay, now I worked with these other people, I jammed with them, and I saw something that they put in their music. Could we put something like that in ours and make it really pop? And you have a little bit of experience behind that as well. You have a little bit of experience with experimentation. So you could potentially put something in there that initially people might think like on paper, well, this doesn't make any sense. Then you listen to it, it's like, holy shit, this might be the best song they ever came up with. It could easily happen that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just helpful to have a broad musical kind of library and kind of so different things to draw on. And we'll be working on something, and I'll make a reference to the Beatles or Boys to Men or Santana or just because I just think you can learn something from every environment.
Absolutely. I mean, take a look at a lot of the bands that are blending different genres as well within a lot of their music. That's kind of the same thing where all of a sudden you take a look at their influence, like, okay, now you got a lot of rock and metal influences in there, but all of a sudden they're influenced by bands like Boyz II Men, with rappers like Tupac and Biggie. They're influenced by, some 80s synth project as well. They're influenced by some random 70s disco thing. They're influenced by a bunch of R&B. It could be anything, but when you take a look at that music, that's when you all of a sudden can really kind of just see where all these different influences come in into this like one pot, just get blended, and next thing you know, you have something that you can really like latch onto as a fan, but also has a unique flavor to it as well.
Yeah, and it's so that's just something. And listen, sometimes that doesn't work because sometimes you work with the younger producers who you bring up the Beatles, they don't to them it almost doesn't translate because their metric for what they think works is stuff that's hot now, and sometimes there's I've had that situation where sometimes there's a bit of a clash, but that's okay. It is what it is.
It is what it is, but that's what happens when you work with many different producers. You're bringing a lot of different other musical backgrounds that you're not necessarily sure, especially from a younger standpoint. Because even using myself, do I know the Beatles? Of course I know the Beatles. I think everyone knows the Beatles, but what I know a lot of their music specifically in terms of what made it great, all these different constructions, not necessarily because I haven't like really dove deep into it, because that's not really my style. Now, if I dive deep into some more like punk rock stuff, hard rock from the 2000s, some metalcore from the past 5 years, yeah, there's certain things I can really find out about that, but that's really what I'm interested in. That's where I dive deep. So when I start making connections with music that's really coming out today, I'm starting to pick off different pieces from, again, metalcore of the past 5 years, punk rock and hard rock from the 2000s, and a couple of some things from the 90s and 80s as well, even some 80s hair metal stuff, because God, when I was growing up, that's all my dad was jamming to. Like, we'd go in the basement, he'd crank up his stereo, basically turn it up to 11, and we just, like, as a 2-year-old, me, my brother, and my dad, we're just air guitaring in the basement to Van Halen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's just, we all have the stuff that we grew up with, the stuff that we're most familiar with, and for me, it's that stuff's just important to like, just so we have a common language. Especially when you're being creative people. Like I say, hey, let's try this like Van Halen type thing, and they understand what you're actually talking about.
Absolutely. It's like when you say, okay, let's try this Van Halen thing, my first thing I think of is that specific signature that Eddie Van Halen created that has that like core Van Halen sound to it. I don't know what it is, but it's when you hear that guitar, it's Eddie. It's just like you instantly know. So all of a sudden you kind of, if you're working with a producer and you both have that same kind of idea with, you're bringing in some Van Halen like guitar parts, now your mind is spinning, but you're both kind of on the same creative process in that realm.
Yeah, of course.
And man, that is fucking awesome, because I've heard some people kind of put in some certain things with Van Halen over the, like maybe the past like 6-7 months, especially since the passing of Eddie Van Halen. Just getting inspired by it and just seeing some of the creative things that people are coming up with. It's really incredible to see how they're pulling this off.
Yeah, listen, I mean, he's probably the most influential guitar player of that entire era, and influential on me. I use the EVH amps. I have some of the guitar effects, and it's rest in peace to Eddie.
His one of his guitar solos is probably the first guitar solo I ever have any cognitive memory of, like knowing back when I was like 1-2 years old. Like, if when it comes to a song that I first have a cognitive memory of, it is a Van Halen song. It is Eddie Van Halen. So there's always a certain connection that people are going to have to different music. And a lot of it will end up coming in, like, especially with some of the older stuff, what they listened to when they were growing up, what their parents were listening to, and how that connection was made. I mean, when it helped me getting into rock and metal and everything I'm into now, that bass was really started in bands like Van Halen, ZZ Top, Poison, Rush, Electric Light Orchestra. That's really where the bass is. And then I grew from there.
That's awesome.
And I got to thank my dad for that one. So Dad, thank you. Well, Doc, one major thing I do want to ask you about is, of course, with DL being the new lead singer of the band, from everything that's happened from when Tommy left and DL joined, what was that process like of finding DL as the new lead for Bad Wolves, and how did this all happen in terms of from, again, when Tommy left to DL joining?
Well, we were aware that DL sang a while back. I mean, ironically, he was in touch with me going back a couple years ago because he just loved Bad Wolves, and he was like almost like joking, but half not joking about joining the band as like a third guitar player. Um, and he would just send me stuff. He did this cover of uh Seven Dust called the Skeleton Song, and he had it on YouTube, but I guess he took it down. And but he did everything. He sang, and I was like, holy shit, this dude's got a fucking great voice. Not that I was thinking about that at the time, but when the split happened, he sent us um a version of the Bad Wolves song "Better Off This Way." I mean, within a day or two of Tommy being out of the band, it was pretty spot on, and it was kind of like mind blowing. Like, damn, that's kind of crazy that we have someone that can do this quickly and sounds this good. But even with that, we still went on an extensive search, and we essentially just brainstormed people we knew. I reached out to a ton of people. We looked at, I mean, we were on YouTube looking at people who were on The Voice and things like that. And everything you can think of, TikTok, people doing covers, recommendations, we just reached out to a ton of people. And, essentially if we thought that they were, good enough, we would just send them some old songs, and then we told them, hey, go to the studio, track these 3 songs and send it back. And so we probably had like maybe 20 people, something around there, do that, maybe a little more. And then out of that, we whittled it down to around 5 or 6 people that we saw in person. And then whittled it down again to about like 3 people, and then had them come and do some new songs. And then we got to meet everyone, and then after that we took essentially we got everyone on the horn. We're like, all right, guys, we have till this Friday to make a decision. Everyone go do your thinking, put your hard hats on, your thinking caps on. And it was a unanimous decision. And it was the decision our management wanted to make. And and pretty much we made the decision, and within a week, DL was here tracking the record, and he worked really fast. He knocked it out of the park. And I'd say with DL, I mean, he's really a giant asset because not only does he write, but he's a really great producer and he's a great songwriter. So there's a whole song on this record that he wrote top to bottom. Uh, and that's, so he has someone who can actually, we can go on the next record and just go to his studio and maybe write directly with him. We might not even have to really use many other producers or stuff. I don't know if that's what we're going to do, but to have someone like that in a band is like having a superpower. So on top of that, I've known DL since 2004. We've been friends for a long time. He's just a really good guy. He's very down to earth. He's a family man. He's married. He has children. He is just someone that when we got in a room with to hang out with, it just felt like he was one of the guys. And there wasn't so that's a big thing of just being generally comfortable around people. That it's tough. I mean, maybe you have someone who's a great singer or just great for any particular band, but maybe if you don't get along personally, or if it feels awkward or anything like that, you remember you have to live in a metal tube with these people for years on end, months on end. So, and he just has an incredible temperament. And that's, kind of with everything that's gone on with the band in terms of controversy or, people online being very aggressive. You have to really have thick skin, I think, to have this job. And I think he's kind of uniquely tempered, and kind of emotionally stable, and like even more so than us, some of the other guys in the band. Like he will be freaking out about something. You talk to him and he's like, don't worry about it. And he's so cool, now, obviously he's a cool person, but I mean, he's cool in his temperament. He doesn't get too high or too low about anything. And that's, I think it makes him really uniquely gifted to kind of do this job.
So if that's the case, then you guys definitely picked the right guy for the job. And I do have to say that I absolutely applaud you for going through all these different ideas in terms of searching for people, not just taking the first couple of people that came along and seeing what happened, because this is a massive undertaking, especially after Tommy had left. And with the massive success that you guys have had, especially since you guys really got into Bad Wolves and started over the past 2 albums. I just was listening to you guys on Spotify right before I started. I wanted to take a look at the monthly Spotify account. I think it was like 2.8 million streams a month. And for like really a lot of rock metal bands, especially that are prominent today, that's still a good number. That's a really good number. And you want to make sure you get the right person. So you want to go as many different places as possible. And I do understand checking TikTok, checking YouTube. I mean, that's how guys from Ashton who found Danny Case was on TikTok, or not on TikTok, on YouTube. And I'm like, holy shit, that really worked out well. Because when that guy screams, he kind of reminds me of like Chester Bennington coming back to life in a way. So it's just making sure you do your homework and figuring out who's going to fit best with the band. But I do love the fact that DL, like right after it happened, it was like, okay, I'm sending you guys this stuff. I want to do this. Like, he was all in from the get-go, even though it would have been like, okay, you guys could have probably gotten away with all the search. You just picked him right away, but you guys want to make sure that you got the right guy for the job. And if you're the most comfortable with him and he is the best man for the job, and everybody in the band, including the rest of the team around the band as well, was like, this is the guy that to go with in their own mindset, and then all come together and that's what you also like agree on, then you clearly picked the right person.
Well, it was an interesting situation because we had some really very, very talented, skilled, great people who were in the running. And for us, it was a matter of like, how different do you want it to be, right? Where is it still Bad Wolves if you go in this direction? Is it still Bad Wolves if you go in that direction? And that was a big thing for us, was just, okay, you don't want to do a rehash, right? You don't want someone to just mimic. But at the same time, if you go too far in this direction, then all of a sudden, does it feel like the same band? So that was a really tough balance to try and figure out. And ultimately, his stuff just felt the most right. And it was, and these are, you're talking about subtle things. Listen, we would show it, we'd ask friends or maybe people we respect in the industry, hey, what do you think about these different singers? And listen, I got a variety of different opinions, like not everyone said they agreed with that, but we knew that it was the right decision. And then, now that the record is pretty much done, it's pretty obvious that was the right choice. It doesn't mean any of the other people, if they joined the band, it wouldn't have been great. Because I think it would have been great with a few people, but this was the correct decision. This was the one that made the most sense.
Again, that's totally understandable. And I do like what you said about when you're trying to figure out, okay, you don't want to do a complete just rehash of everything, because then it's just like, okay, you guys just are doing the same thing over and over again. But you don't want to go way, way too far off, because then all of a sudden you never know what, you just don't know what happens. You kind of want to find a way where you can still have that Bad Wolves feel, that Bad Wolves sound, but it might be just a little bit different, really finding that perfect balance. Very similar to kind of like, I'll use AC/DC as the perfect example, because you can tell that both the AC/DC Bon Scott and Brian Johnson, that's clearly AC/DC on both of them. But they have they have the same feel, but just the vocal sound is different, but it still works out in both respects. I mean, people still listen to Highway to Hell like crazy, and all of a sudden then you go to Back in Black, it's like people that like AC/DC don't have a problem switching between both singers.
Yeah, I mean, but ultimately it's about the songs, right? And having a something that works, right? They recorded Back in Black, and that speaks for itself, right? So ultimately, if you can do something of that caliber, and I think a big issue is if when you have any big member changes, right? Is the quality still there, right? Is it at a certain level? And so that's really on us. And yeah, I mean, listen, it's, no one can predict the future. You just can't. And I would say any band that changes the lead singer is facing a challenge, right? It is what it is. If you were to go and look at all the bands that change lead singers, like, okay, what percentage were successful? Which percentage just did okay? Which percentage clearly didn't do okay? And it's the ones that really knocked it out of the park is probably a less amount than ones where it didn't really work. So you already know you're fighting an uphill battle, which is why business wise bands won't do this unless it's absolutely necessary. It's not something you do on a whim, or if you something you haven't really thought about. You have to try and find ways to, you look at Five Finger, for example, where they had a lot of issues with Ivan, and they didn't know what was going to happen, but they were very adamant about doing anything they could to keep Ivan in the fold, and ultimately worked out for them. So it's not easy, and we're really just going to find out. But in many ways, for me, you know, I haven't really talked about this a lot publicly, but like I was at a certain point, I was going to quit the band anyway. So in many ways, like let's say the band it doesn't work or whatever, I was gonna quit anyway before all this happened. So it's like I was gonna be doing something different anyway. So it's just finishing a record is like already an achievement, right? It's already so the way I look at it, like I'm playing with house money. I don't look at it like bad was this level, and if we go to another level, that means it's a failure. Because if you just look at everything in its totality, these are difficult things to do. So just accomplishing, like releasing a record is an accomplishment. Playing just one show is an accomplishment. And then you put all the other metrics in there and you see where you land, and you just have to take it one step at a time. But you can't climb Everest in a day. You gotta just take it one step at a time. And if you're looking too far down the road, then like I say, you're gonna miss what's right in front of you.
Yeah, it's like the good old Ferris Bueller quote, life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you're going to miss it.
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of this is very related to like sports analogies, right? Like you can't just look at whether you won or lost the game, because there's a lot of lessons in you can do everything, you can play your heart out and leave everything on the field or the court or the whatever, and still catch an L, and unfortunately sports is zero sum, right? Either you win or lose. I know some sports have draws, uh, but most sports don't. And but business isn't necessarily like that. Music isn't like always like that, right? It's not like Courtney LaPlante from I hope I'm pronouncing her last name correctly, from Spirit Box, like had this tweet. She was like talking about how wouldn't it be crazy if musicians at the end of a show had to give a press conference like people in sports do, and you have to talk about the show. I missed this note in the third song. It was just it wasn't my best night. And you had to kind of answer questions. But it's not like that. It's not like at the end of a show either you lost or you won. You can look at your own show and go, hey, I thought we had a pretty good show, but it's not like that. So I kind of look at this in a lot of different ways, but unfortunately the world doesn't always judge it that way. There are always people looking to take you down a peg or say you're a loser, you're a winner, you're going to be, we get a lot of nasty commentary from people who, ex fans or people who pretend to be fans who say we're done, or we're going to be doing this, or we're going to, and that's a very kind of interesting and difficult thing to deal with, to have someone who's, or not even someone, like a good amount of people who wish you to fail, or either wish you to fail or think you will and tell you that. And then you as an individual you really find out what you're made of. And by the way, that's what people in sports have to deal with every day, right? You go into a opposing team's field and there's a bunch of people booing you and there's signs telling you suck. Like, so that musicians and normal people, you don't have to deal with that. And but it kind of like that, you in a sense that kind of shows you what you're made of. You have to work on your kind of mental strength and emotional kind of fortitude.
And I think one thing you did say too is like kind of using the sports analogy, where you definitely have the difference between a win and a loss in that, where in music you don't have that. But why people I think really try and latch on to that is because it's simple, it's easy, it's rather black and white. It's like, okay, either you won or you lost. But when it comes to music, it's not that way. It's something where everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. When you go see a live show, all of a sudden, if you really connected with the band, you really connect with the live show, holy shit, you're going to leave just enjoying yourself. That's going to be most people. Of course, you're still going to get those people that are going to be like, oh no, this was bad, meh. But you're never going to be able to please everybody. And especially with what you guys are going through, I can easily see that you guys are definitely dealing with a good amount of negativity and backlash just based on the fact that you might have people that are very very into just like, okay, they're very still behind Tommy, or they just like, okay, we don't think you guys are going to succeed, so they kind of hope you fail. But it does show you really what you're made of as a person to focus on everything else and not focus on the negativity, because there's always going to be negativity out there. There's always going to be people that are going to go against what you want to do. And sometimes it's because they're jealous of where you are. They would rather be where you are, and they just want to bring you down a peg. There are people that are like that. But when it comes down to it, it really shows you what you are made of as a person. And it helps show that the confidence that you've built up within yourself over the years is able to overcome all the crap that you're going to get from a negative, like, kind of a persuasion, especially with the day and age we live in today on social media, because it seems like everyone has this larger than life voice because they can type out a large comment and everyone can see it.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, most of these people putting negative commentary to us have been lied to, have been manipulated into thinking that this is some like us versus them, like teams. Like once you can put people into tribalized mindsets, then you can get them to think that way, right? And it's a scam. They're being scammed. They don't know it. They don't realize they're a pawn in someone else's game. And it's unfortunate, especially when you look at things like politics and social movements, that as long as you can, if I put you're in the red group, or you're in the blue group, or you're in the D, or you're in the R, and that's your enemy. It's like, if all I have to do is do that, and I can get you to do anything, right? As long as I say it's the bad people that did it, right? And a lot of these people, they're so wrapped up in these culture wars and this like fake tribalism, because it is fake, right? Because we all have family members who think differently than us. We all have, communities where, oh, this person votes for this person, that person, but we go to the same stores, we hang out at the same bars. Like, I know things are separated in a lot of ways, but if you talk to people, in many ways, we have way more in common than we have that we disagree with. But we're being the people that engage in this stuff, that engage in divisiveness, guess what? They always are making money at the end of it. So if you notice that someone's out there spreading negativity and getting one group of people to hate another group of people, and they at one point they're like, oh, here's where you can buy this, here's where you can pay for this, then you know that they're a grifter, and that's what they're doing. They are taking advantage of your vulnerabilities. And listen, I get a lot of people, we've gone through, like we talked about before, one of the most difficult periods in American history, and that's put people in a very vulnerable situation. It's like, do you ever watch that show, The Leftovers?
I have not.
So it was a show on HBO about, it was like the Avengers, like Endgame, where like people disappeared. Like it wasn't half the people, but a good amount of people just disappeared. They thought it was the rapture, right? But it was so destabilizing that it created these cults of people who just didn't care about anything. And and that's why when tragedies happen, or things that really affect your way of life, like, that was a situation where it's like, on Monday things were normal, and by Friday they closed the bars and the NBA, and we couldn't do anything. And that's destabilizing. And so when people are scared and they feel like they don't know what's going on, and you take away their ability to go to school or maybe go to work, then they become very ripe for the picking for a lot of bad ideas. And it always comes down to, who is it to blame? Hey, I'm gonna tell you who to blame. Blame these people, and they feed you that, and then now all of a sudden 6 months later you're in some weird cult, and you didn't even know how you got there. It's really unfortunate, but it's predictable.
It is. And if you take a look at past events in human history, I mean, just studying history will show you this too. It's humans do sometimes have this innate like tribal mentality where they just kind of want to be a part of the group. And when you're a part of the group, you kind of develop that group think mentality to the point where if someone thinks something other than what you think, all of a sudden you just don't like them or hate them for that reason. And you guys could be like the most similar people ever, but because it's just this one instance, all of a sudden you hate each other for some reason. Me and my best friend, when it comes to different viewpoints politically, him and I are on completely different spectrums. We always have been. Whenever we discuss this stuff, it's we know that we're friends. And when it comes to when we discuss stuff, it seems like the end goal of what we want to achieve is the same thing. But then the difference is, how do we achieve that? And that's where we get to talking, and it's not going to be, I'm going to force you to follow my opinion. It's, I just want you to understand what I'm thinking. And then we're going to make our decision off of that. So whenever we have talks like that, holy shit, it works. But then during the whole entire pandemic, I was seeing this girl consistently, and one of these kind of conversations came up. So we were talking about it, and I was just talking about like how I normally would, just, okay, here's my opinion, here's my thoughts, here's my evidence kind of thing. And I don't expect you to agree with me, but I just expect you to kind of just try and understand my opinion and then come up with your own conclusion. When we did that, it seemed like it was fine. That was the last time she spoke to me. I'd been hanging out there for almost a year, and then boom, that was it, like completely cut off. And I'm wondering what the hell happened. But it's when people get into that like kind of tribal mentality, all of a sudden it's, okay, this group's not good, this group's not good. You get everything divided, and who's gonna end up coming out on top of that? The people who divided everybody.
Yeah, and listen, and I think that's happening on all sides right now, where people go, well, don't talk to those people. They're or people get in their bubbles, and I'm kind of the mindset. I think because of that, because it's so extreme, I'm like, you know what? You can't even, if we have a conversation, right, and you're way far in one spectrum, and you have your own set of facts, right, and so you're gonna say, well, I have my own set of facts, and we don't even correlate in the same reality. I have really no chance of convincing you or changing your mind or influencing you at all. So if that's the point, then what's the point of actually having a conversation, right? If you're someone who literally is so embedded in the way you see the world that you're not willing to accept new information, or that anything that's counter to the way you think, you're just assume that it's either fake or that it's made up or whatever. You're in a dangerous scenario, and that's kind of where we're at right now, where we can't. So that's why, like, certain people, I just don't like. I kind of know where someone stands in something. Like, I'm just not going to bring those subject matter up because it's not going to be productive. Where I felt like 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 12, like you could talk to people who had different opinions and actually listen to each other and go, okay, like I might not totally change my position, but at least I could hear you out and go, okay, I kind of see your perspective now, and now I have a more fully formed idea about this particular subject. Even if I don't totally move off where I am, at least I become someone who understands people who disagree with me. And that's something people have lost, is the ability to just understand and go, hey, that person thinks this, but I kind of get it, but I don't hate them for it. I wish they thought a little different, but hey, they don't. And and some of that is like, it's literally like genetic. Like, some people are just born to think one way, and that's just how they see it. And it's just, there's nothing you can do. And so ultimately, if you can't get rid of all the damn people, that means you got to work with them, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and not only that, but when it comes to just people go through completely different things in life as well. Hell, what I've experienced in my life so far and what you've experienced in your life so far are two completely different things. So whatever our viewpoints are, whether it's politics, life, music, entertainment, whatever, sports, whatever it might be, it could be anything. Because of what we've gone through in life has been completely different, our views might be shaped in what we've experienced. So instead of just focusing on like, oh, they believe that's bad, it's like, no, actually get to talk to them, actually get to try and understand them. But the problem is kind of everyone does kind of get into that tribal mentality, or a lot of people have been kind of getting into that tribal mentality to the point where you're so far indoctrinated on one side, or you're so far embedded in the way that you think, that if someone thinks the opposite of you or just slightly disagrees with you, all of a sudden it's, okay, they disagree with me completely, that's bad, boo, don't even talk to me anymore. There's really no way to compromise, but there's no way just to get into a normal conversation with a lot of people and just enjoy if you bring up those kind of subjects. It seems like there's certain subjects like you have to stick to just so that you don't get people all riled up, and then you end up having, like, as they would say in South Park with the skiing episode, you're gonna have a bad time.
yeah, and that's, and I also think too, it's also because people are actually not speaking in person as much anymore. They're not having normal conversations in a bar or at someone's house. It's all online. And when you're talking on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, you're not really having a conversation. You're just monologuing at each other, and you're kind of talking at people, or you're I don't know, there's something kind of inhuman about it, and it doesn't really work unless both people involved are like giving each other the benefit of the doubt, right? Like, and that's difficult because everyone almost shows up in this very defensive position. They're ready to fight, right? And it's like it's just tough, so it's very grating, and it's unfortunate because I personally enjoy having conversations with people I disagree with on things because it's always more interesting, right? Like, what's so interesting about having a conversation where it's like I give an opinion, they go, "Yup, I agree." That's the end of the conversation. It's not tennis where you hit the ball back and forth, right? So I always find that really interesting, but this environment, especially how it's kind of bled into uh my musical career, it's made it like just not fun, just toxic, and like I'd rather almost take a reprieve and just stay away from it for the near future and just really focus on music and being a performer and writing and just where can I engage in something where I walk away with it and feel good about it, right? Like, who wants to do something consistently where they walk away from it and they have like a pit in their stomach and they're stressed out and they're sweating and they're like worked up, and if you put your phone down, your heart rate's jacked up, probably shouldn't be on that phone, you know?
Yeah, I can even attest that as well because when I was just getting out of college and I worked the first job I worked at, there were like over a year, there was a point in time where I would just get off the highway and I'd just be thinking, what happens if I just turned the fuck around right now and went home? Because I hated that job so much. And it just came to a point where it's like, why am I still doing this? Why am I still working here? Is it just because the money's good? Is it because it's something that's safe? Why the hell am I still doing this? So it does get to a point where I do understand what you're talking about, where you want to end up doing something where you're not always gonna come back, but you have a good chance of coming out of there and feeling good about what you have worked on, what you've accomplished. And I can totally see with what you guys are going through with Bad Wolf, especially on social media, where you're going to get a lot of that negative opinion, especially over the past year, and a lot of these negative comments. And you could go and engage with those people and say, okay, well, why do you think this? And then try and start a conversation. But what you said about people being online on social media, and it's not like you're getting a conversation, because I've actually gotten good conversations with people on social media, but I do understand what you're saying, where it's like people are just monologuing back and forth, where you're throwing this whole entire thing at me, and I got to respond. If I respond with a little bit of just something small, like asking a question, all of a sudden it's kind of like feels like you're giving up in a way. It's like you're giving them everything. It's really interesting to see what happens, but I do agree with you where that lack of face-to-face interaction, of course, especially with the pandemic, with everybody kind of being forced inside, and the really only way to communicate with people that weren't really like right within your little group was to be online. Yeah, you're going to get a lot more of that. But now with things really starting to open up, concerts coming back, you're going to have that face-to-face interaction with people. And there's going to be a lot of people that still don't have that face-to-face interaction because they're not going to go out and see a lot of these people. Myself, I can't wait to go out to these concerts. I can't wait to go out to live shows and see these people. And again, I can't wait to see my concert family here in Milwaukee, where I don't even know their fucking names. I know their faces. I don't know their names. They could be people that have completely different lifestyles than me, think completely differently than me. But all that matters is like, I want to see them. I want to see them at the rave here in Milwaukee, and I want to know how they're doing. I just hope they're still there when I get to go back for the first time in August when Deftones comes here. I want to see them again. I want to be in a mosh pit with them. I don't care what they do in life. I don't care who they are. I just want to see them there, and I want to get in the mosh pit with them because I miss that. I really miss that.
Well, and that's the thing about this that's beautiful about this culture of rock and metal and heavy music, is that feeling of we're sharing something together that's kind of bigger than ourselves, that it doesn't matter who you voted for when you're in the pit, right? It doesn't matter what your position is on whatever when you're singing along to your favorite band, and that we're all there for the same reason, and all that shit really shouldn't matter then. There's certain issues that are big issues, and people that, if you're a band where, like, imagine if you're Jimi Hendrix or some artist in the 60s and you're talking about, I want to stop the Vietnam War, then so be it. Like, that's an important issue, right? Like, it's not like those issues aren't a part of music or art or whatever your issue is. Like, God forbid, we had records, anti-Iraq war records, right? Whatever, right? So it's not necessarily about not having political stances, but there are things that in that moment that go beyond that. And that's something, I think I've learned in the past year, that it's not a want to be at shows or hang out or be amongst our friends. Like, it's a need. Human beings need this. We need to commune. We need to hang out. And for those of us who did separate from people and didn't, who were really social distancing, like, that took a real toll. It's not, and that's not something, I think we want to get used to. I think we want to get back to being around people and get back to really, doing that stuff. Because I think if we go further down that route of like isolation, it's like we're gonna be like, you ever see that movie Wall-E, where they're
Yeah.
like all the people there in their little little like floating units, and they're like in like, you're like zapped into the matrix or whatever, and you're just not part of humanity. And we go further down that path. So of course we had to do some of those things, and it wasn't ideal, and it was a sacrifice we made. But I'm really hoping that becomes something of the past, and we all look back, oh, remember that year where we were all stuck inside and it sucked? Well, let's be grateful that we don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, it's use it as history, put it in context to the point where we don't want to end up being down that road anymore. We don't want to end up being isolated from everyone. We want to just enjoy and just be with everybody and just, again, feel like a family once again. And that's why I do understand what you're saying and totally agree, where it's no longer a want to go to shows. It's a need to go to these live shows, because one thing I remember was Dave Grohl said he could write a song and sing it at a concert in front of 85,000 fans. And 85,000 fans could sing it back to him for 85,000 different reasons, because everyone connects to the music completely differently, but we're all there at a show because we're having a positive experience with the music. That's what's connecting us. And again, it doesn't matter what political affiliation you have, what religious belief or doctrine you believe in, what other different ideas you have in life that other people don't agree with. But the fact of the matter is you're there at a place where everyone is enjoying something that's on stage at a show, and it's all common between everybody. So that's why it's like when I go to live shows, man, it's one of the best things ever. Even because I went to one at the end of May here in Wisconsin. I went to go see Royal Bliss, and I'm just like, okay, I just want to see like my first real like big show since the pandemic really hit. So I'm like, okay, I just want to just get back in there and just see what happens. I started talking with people I've never met before in my life, because the show was an hour away from Milwaukee. I've never met these people before. They were telling me about their life stories. I'm like, this is fucking awesome, because I'm going to connect with random people who I have no idea who they are, but we're all here because we want to see this band up on stage. And they started singing the song I Was Drunk. Everyone's got a beer in their hand. People got their arms around each other, swaying back and forth, going, I was drunk and I was loud. And it's just one of the coolest things ever since the pandemic, because finally we're all together once again, and we're enjoying everything that's going on in that moment at that one time.
Yeah, so like I went to a bar when I was in Jersey a couple weeks ago. I ended up going to the old bar I worked at in Brooklyn called Duff's, and they had just like reopened full. So it's a little weird, like when you haven't really been around a lot of people in a normal bar, but you're like, okay, this is, even for myself, I feel like I'm out of practice being in public around people. Like, I got to get my my social graces back and learn how to just hang out in a group of people again. So we got to get back to get used to it again. So I think I know there's shows happening. Actually, I'm going to a show tomorrow, actually. So it'll be like my first show, but it's like at a bar. It's not some big thing, but whatever, baby steps.
Absolutely, baby sex. When I saw Royal Bliss, it was at a bar. There's maybe 200 people there. I'm like, you know what? This is, especially after we've gone through in the past year, and it's like kind of trying to get back into that realm of, I want to get back out. I want to be social again. I want to be around people. Absolutely. Start out small and go from there, because I want to get to a point where all of a sudden, when August comes around, I get to go see Deftones here at Third Milwaukee. And then when go in September, because I'm going out to Blue Ridge in Virginia, when that happens, I want it to be somewhere, this feels normal again. Like, it feels like constantly masking up and having a social distance is easily a thing of the past.
Thank God.
Thank God, because I don't know how much longer I could go without live music, man. I don't want to ever go through that again. That was bad.
Well, yeah, you guys got Rock Fest. Rock USA is no more, right?
Yeah, Rock USA, they, I'm trying to think. They went bankrupt, and then the venue that they had in Oshkosh, they ended up selling the venue because they couldn't make the payments on it, and the Danny Woodman Presents company bought it. So it seems, I looked at them like, okay, at least someone who bought it is someone that is into live music, especially more the rock and metal variety. So I'm like, they might bring something back here because I know they had Northern Invasion up like right at the Minnesota-Wisconsin border, but they kind of defunct that. I think it was in 2016 or 2017. So they might start bringing something back to Oshkosh. Now I don't mind whatever they bring back. I'm good with it.
Yeah, I mean, those festivals, man, they're a lot of fun. I can't remember. I was getting them confused because one was really muddy, and then one was really hot. Like we did it in the same weekend, like in 2019. I can't remember which one was the muddy one.
Oh shit, I gotta think about that one because I wasn't at either of them, but I had friends that were at both. I'm trying to remember. I think it was Rock USA might have been the muddy one because if you guys played on that Sunday, because I know it rained extensively on that Saturday, so it might have been super duper muddy. And then Rockfest, because it's in the western part of the state, that one might have been super duper just hot.
Remember. Yeah, one was muddy, and that was sucked. The heat was bad, but I could handle the heat more than I can handle the mud.
See, as a fan, I'm like, at first part, I'm like, man, the mud might not be as fun, but then I'm also thinking, man, that mosh pit might be as fun as hell, but you could easily get a lot more hurt because all of a sudden you're slipping all over the place. You're falling on your face. People trying to pick you back up. All of a sudden everyone's slipping. And next thing you know, you're going to have a huge cut right above your eye that's bleeding. You got to run to the bathroom to try and figure out how to stop the bleeding so you can see the rest of the show. Yeah.
For me, I was worried about my Air Jordans. So that was, I wore like basically brand new shoes, and it was a bad idea. So.
Ooh. Okay. So maybe in the future, when you guys are back to playing festivals, no brand new Air Jordans.
Exactly.
That might be a good little rule to follow. I got to follow that too, because every time I seem like I go to a show, it's like, okay, I'm wearing shoes. It's like, okay, maybe they're not the best looking shoes, but they're not the worst looking shoes. By the time I'm done with them, like, yeah, I pretty much have to like either make these my designated concert shoes or basically throw them away because they just get ripped up to shreds. When I went to go see Gwar in 2019, I'm like, yikes, I definitely should have worn different clothes to this because I ended up looking like I was just covered in just. It looked like I just walked through like a haunted house and got covered in blood.
That sounds like a Gwar show.
Yeah, and I'm looking, I'm like, you know what? I don't listen to much Gwar, but if they had a live show that's coming near me, by God, I want to be there.
Love Gwar.
And I saw they're coming back to Milwaukee in November. I'm just like, oh, yay! I get to go see him again. Woo!
I played with Gwar at the Rave in 2002, and Ludacris played upstairs at the Eagles Ballroom.
Oh my God. It's always crazy when they get multiple bands playing it or multiple artists playing at the exact same time. Because of course they got three different levels. I've talked about this plenty of times to the point where I've been to a show where all of a sudden it was like they had some pop artists at the top at the ballroom. In the middle, they had some alternative rock artists. In the basement, it was Light the Torch, Fit for a King, and the headliner was Ice Nine Kills.
I played every room there.
Have you signed the pool though?
I didn't sign the pool, but I've been around there.
Shoot, because I ended up finding my way in the pool last year because they did a whole entire haunted house thing just to try and get more people to come to the venue and even like through social distancing still just support the venue. I'm like, fuck yeah, I want to go. And I'm like, I got to find this freaking pool. I had a flashlight. They turned all the lights off. I'm like, I got to find this thing. I found it. I was just happy as all hell. Even looking at then the pool at the base, they had a smoke machine going and they had a little red balloon coming up from the grate. And I'm just like, oh, that's funny. It's like Pennywise down there. People are kind of giving this like mystery, like creepy vibe in there. There's me with a flashlight. I'm looking at every single signature I can. I'm like, was I at that show? Was I at that show? Was I at that show? Do I know that band? Or like a little kid in a candy store looking at all that shit.
No, that place is creepy to me. I'm not looking for nothing.
Oh, well, I hope, because you guys were set to play there in 2020. I hope you guys do come back though, because, well, I've tried to, again, two times I was set to see Bad Wolves. And of course, stuff ends up getting in the way, but I'm not missing that third time, man. I'm not missing it.
Glad to hear.
Well, Doc, as we close out this podcast, I always like to give you a chance, or whoever's on the podcast, a chance to say whatever they want to say at the end, plug whatever they want to plug at the end. So, Doc, I got to say, floor is yours.
Yeah, I mean, just check out my podcast, The X-Men. Usually do a show every week. I always have some killer guests. Just had KK Downing from Judas Priest on the show. Got some cool ones coming up. I have another show called Last Words, which is in podcast form, and it's on YouTube, and that's on the channel The Pit. So check that out as well. Yeah, new Bad Wolf stuff coming soon. Hopefully sooner than later, but I would imagine very soon, and I'm excited for everyone to hear that.
I'm excited to hear it as well. And now it's my time to end everything with this podcast. 3 separate things. So first, when it comes to those podcasts, when it comes to Bad Wolves, when it comes to finding Doc online, everything you're going to want to find, of course, you're going to want links to it. You're going to want to make it as easy as possible. So take a look at the description below the podcast. You're going to see everything there for those podcasts, for Doc, for Bad Wolves, to connect them on social media, stream all the podcasts, stream the music, whatever it might be, so that when the new album comes out, you're ready to go. I'm going to have everything set there for you, so you don't have an excuse. It's literally a one-stop shop right then and there. Second thing. Now, Doc, whenever I have a guest in the podcast that I absolutely enjoy having on, I tend to make a promise, and this happened 100% of the time, and the trend just continues here. So because I've had tickets to you guys twice, and of course things got in the way. So that third time is a charm, when I get to see you perform live, my promise to you is this: first round's on me.
I will not say no.
Good man. Alrighty, Doc. So on that note, because I can't wait to see what happens with Bad Wolves, especially with the new album coming out at some point in the future. We'll see 2021, maybe 2022. Who knows at this point, but I'm still hoping sometime this year. Again, we'll see what happens. When you guys get to play the live show, I can't wait to see you perform for the first time. So I can't end this with a goodbye, because hell, it can be the only time I talk, the only time I get to see you. So I got to end it with, see you later.
Yeah, brother.
Well, folks, that was my interview with Doc Coyle from the band Bad Wolves. I want to give a big shout out to Anthony from the band Defy the Tyrants for connecting us with, well, Doc Coyle from Bad Wolves, of course. And yes, Defy the Tyrants is going to be on a Chord Progression podcast episode in July. I want to put this one out first because, my God, I couldn't wait to send this one out to you guys. So make sure you check out Bad Wolves when their new stuff comes out and listen to the stuff they have out now. All the links description below for Bad Wolf, for Doc Coyle, and for Doc's 2's podcast as well. So you can get in the know with that. You can really get behind that and enjoy everything that they have to offer. And yes, I can't wait to see Bad Wolves for the first time live, because I've had the chance to see him twice. Once because of COVID, once because, well, with Rockfest, there's other things going on behind the scenes right now. They just, couldn't necessarily play the show. They weren't sure they're going to make it, but I can't wait to see them play live. And again, that new album's going to come out at some point. You got to be ready for it. I want to thank Phoenix Fitness again for sponsoring this video. You can get 15% off your entire order on phoenixfitness.com. Again, I've got the link description below. Use the code MSOTD to do that. Follow us on the Chord Progression podcast. You can subscribe to the MSOTD Rock channel on YouTube, where we post the videos, or you can subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart Radio. Plus, all our social are in the link description below as well. So go follow us if you haven't. And on that note, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to the Chord Progression podcast. What's at MSOTD Rocks, or Rock and Metal Thrive. My name is Kevin. And you guys know how I end every single one of these episodes with a big, healthy, and hearty yeah.